G'day shaggers, it's Dan here from Horo Buds, and today we're going to share with you our top 5 tips for fishing beginners. So if you're new to fishing and just getting started out, or you just want to find out a little bit more about how Horo Buds do it, hang around to the end of the vid. Righto, step number 1, make yourself a plan. Put a bit of thought into where you're going, when you're going, what you're targeting, and what you're going to need to take. Well, if you're heading somewhere you've never been before, Google Earth's a really cool tool to do a bit of recon work before you head out. It's good for finding out how to get there, what the access is like, what sort of facilities they've got. You can see here using it at the Ocean Creek boat ramp. You actually get some photos of what it looks like, what's there, and you can even use it for zooming in on the creek itself and finding out where channels, creek mouths, gutters, all that sort of stuff. Very cool tool. Do yourself a favour and check the tide book before you go. Fish will often feed actively around the change of tide, but also can be hard work if you find yourself in this situation and you're not prepared. And believe me, you don't want to end up like this bloke on an outgoing tide. And for God's sake, check your weather forecast. Get yourself a good weather app, Willy Weather, Sea Breeze, something like that. Last thing you want to do is end up out in the rain, or even worse, caught up in a storm with big seas, like these whackers. Tip number 2, try and get as much local knowledge as you can about the area where you're fishing. Definitely each place that you fish will be slightly different, so it's always great to get a local insight. Hit up your local tackle store, ask a mate who's fished there before, or get onto a fishing forum on the net or a local fishing Facebook group. Huds and I hit up my cousin Tim, who's done quite a lot of fishing up at Tinaroo over the years, on some tips for catching big barra, and his tips on how to burley up and when to fish at night really paid big dividends for Huds and I up there this year. Tip number 3, use live or fresh bait caught from the area. If you can, absolutely gather your own bait from the area where you're fishing. It makes a huge difference. I mean, lures, they have their place, but they're probably not the easiest technique for a beginner. You're better off, I think, investing a bit of time and effort into getting a cast net, a yabby pump, and teaching yourself how to use those items to gather fresh prawns, fresh mullet, fresh yabbies, whatever you can. And if you're lucky enough to get out in the bay or offshore, do yourself a favour and get a squid light and a net or some jigs, because live squid or fresh squid is the absolute best bait you can ever have. This donk and finger mark caught by Hudsy's cousin Darth is a perfect example of the benefits of live bait. Tip number 4, fill out a trip sheet. This one's a bit of a safety measure, particularly up here in North Queensland. Most of the places you're going to be going fishing are fairly remote, isolated. You might not see another boat or another vehicle for hours. So if you are going somewhere like that, always tell someone where you're going, how long you expect to be there, and when you expect to be home, because it doesn't take much for things to go pear-shaped and you end up in trouble. And if you haven't got someone to come looking for you, then you could literally end up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. And last but absolutely not least, tip number 5, enjoy yourself with some mates. The whole reason I got into fishing was because of my family, my brothers, my father, my cousins. We all had such a good time together fishing as kids, and that really is why you go fishing, or why I go fishing anyway. Now I'm doing it with my son Hudson, and we just have a ball with him and all his cousins and his mates, and it really is the best part. Fishing is what's important, not so much the fish. So get yourself a fishing buddy or two and get out on the water. Well, that's our top 5 tips on fishing for beginners. I hope you guys enjoyed. Why don't you leave a comment down below and let us know what else you'd like to know, if we've missed anything out that you think's important. And if you want to follow along on our adventures, maybe get to know the Horo Buds a little bit better, why don't you subscribe to our channel. See you guys out there.